Okay, look, 2, trouble's going. She's gone.
I'm Gladys, and I was born in the village. My name then was Gladys Williams. I'm now Gladys Harner. I was born in 1940. I was supposed to be born at the farm where my parents lived, but my mother walked down to see her mother at Havendale, and I came early, so I was born in the front room. So,
I'm Sandra. I'm Lee Walker, and I was also born in Havendale, which is now Arden Cottage. And I was born upstairs on December the 16th, 1948.
the loo was at the top of the garden.
Yes, right at the top of the
Right at the
garden.
It had a lovely wooden seat, and it was collected by the sewage people. Used to have the lorry come and collect it.
My uncle has worked on that.
Yeah. But that's what you were used to. You didn't really know any different. If you went to other people's houses, obviously some people had, not in the village, but for your friends, had flush toilets, but it's just one of those things. And you had
Newspaper on a piece of string.
yeah, you did, cut into squares. So you had a paper to read. Yeah, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, I hadn't.
We moved to Chearsley as newlyweds in, I think it was August 73, because Andy was going to start working in London, and we scoured the area for a new house.
So anyway, we came to look at it, and it was just instant. We said, we like it.
But I was told on arrival in the village, you need a pram or a dog to get to know people. So I plumped for a pram.
We got a cat as well, but yeah.
We found people very friendly. I remember there was a lady called Bet Lane, and she knocked on my door and she said, you be the new lady of the house then? I said, yes.
And Jill
Very
said, R.I.B.
sheepishly.
When I came here, I was delivered by a horse box with all my furniture came in. I also had a 6-month-old child, or he might have been 10-month-old child, a 2.5 son, and a 4-year-old son on my own. And I was terribly lucky to get my cottage. It was originally Colonel Barnard for his workforce, and Mr. and Mrs. Blunt lived in the cottage, and eventually he sold it to them for £50. I had to pay a little bit more. I had to pay £4,400. But anyway, it's a lovely cottage and I love it.
One fine day, it saw this farm for sale in the Oxford Times, because that was another area we looked in, because we wanted to be in the Oxford area. And so we came out and we went to Bicester, I think, and then drove down from the A41 to the gates there at Wadston, where the grain store is, and turned right and came along that absolutely beautiful ridgeback road through Upper Winchenden, and looked across the valley and the Chiltern Hills on the left-hand side, and these hills around here, and it was breathtaking, really.
I'm Della, and I arrived in this village in, would you believe, 1976 with 4 children. We had 1 bathroom with 1 loo, and it was quite tough, really. And one of my first memories was with Julian Harford. He came round to see us, and we all sat round on tea chests and we sang hymns. And that's a lasting memory with me, singing with Julian Harford, All Things Bright and Beautiful. So that was a lovely memory.
The first person to visit, knocking politely on the door, was the vicar, and I thought, oh no, he's going to see what a muddle we live in. And the first thing he said was, don't worry, I haven't come because I'm the vicar. I've just come to bring you the bus timetable, tell you what time the shop opens, and anything else, of course, tell you the church services, but only if you're interested. Well, of course, I was interested, so that was good. And about a week later came Rosemary Wallace, knocked on the door, and I very soon realised Rosemary was a great power in the village, and she was organising a cross-country running event to raise funds. It raised funds for both St Mary's in Long Crendon and St Nicholas in Chearsley. And she said there were going to be a lot of people and she needed cake. I thought, well, I'm in a bit of a muddle, but I'm sure I can manage cake. And I asked her how much, and she said, well, she thought about 200 people. And I said, oh, wow, thinking, okay. And so it was in about a week's time, I think, this cross-country. So I set to and made her 100 small buns and put them in a box and took them down the night before. And she looked at me and went, what on earth are these? She'd meant me to make a plateful. And I had made her a box full. However, I then got involved with helping with this cross-country, and everybody saw me with Rosemary, so therefore I was somebody who'd been there, and I was never new in the village after the first week because I had helped and because everybody had seen me. And for a long time people used to tease me about the box of cakes, but they were all eaten.
When I came here, we didn't have any main drainage, and I had a lovely cesspit at the bottom of the garden. Since then, when they put main drainage in, it's a beautiful patch for vegetables. They put the main drainage straight across my garden from School Lane across to Watts Green. When they dug it up, you could see all the witchet, which my house is built of witchet. Unfortunately, I had a vegetable patch going through there too. They took a lot of the topsoil, so I said, come on, give us some more, please. And they came along and gave me some more, and I wish I hadn't asked because it was worse than the soil I had on there.
You had a big boiler where Granny used to boil the clothes when she washed them. I think she had an electric kettle where she used to, because it's only cold water, where she used to heat the water up. And we used to have a wash, but we used to have a bath once a week. I think they called them bungalow baths, sort of tin things, which then was outside on a hook when you weren't using it. That was once a week. We had feather beds, that's what I remember. Feather beds were lovely. No central heating, of course.
No, but we were never cold.
No. And lovely feather beds. And you had a fire in one room. So you all really were together. You didn't wander about the house. Sort of in the evenings, you sat around and listen. You used to have the radio. It was good.
Mm. Going back to the 70s, people who have everything now possibly wouldn't realise that a lot of the houses in this village didn't have central heating. They perhaps had a coal fire, which did the best it could. We were lucky because Fairlands, which was built in the 70s, did have a boiler and radiators, and that to us was great luxury. We had central heating in London, but sort of electric, so the radiators you could switch on and off were really rather good. The other things that were different were there was very little double glazing, for instance. We hadn't really heard about double glazing salesmen, which became a great thing in the 70s, because we didn't have a television, and we weren't the only ones. It was uncommon for people to have televisions in those days. We all had radios. we all knew what was going on. We weren't in the dark ages.
We met lots of people very quickly in the village, because even in those days it was a very friendly village. But one of my other memories is walking up to the bus stop, because we only had one car, and I walked up to the bus stop and just stood there, and somebody sidled up to me. I'll tell you who it is in a minute. She said, "Are you a stranger round here?" I said, "Oh, no, not really." And it was Brenda Dormer's mother-in-law.
I was in the RAF at Strike Command, and I remember I had to find a house somewhere. I drew a 20-mile radius from Strike Command. There were 3 houses available in the area of my budget of 18,000, and basically you had to rush in there and buy almost without seeing. So that's how we ended up in Chearsley, which we didn't know anything about. We settled into this old Bucks village, and some of the people in fact were very limited in their travel. As an example, the following weekend we were going sailing out of Portsmouth with the family, and we'd inherited some chickens, and the guy down the bottom of the garden in Angela's old house, Tom, he lived in that cottage.
Tommy Hicks.
He lived in the Tomix, yeah. He lived in that cottage. He was born it. He lived in it and died in it. But I saw him and I waved to him. He said, "Oh," he came over to see me. He said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, could you possibly look after my chickens?" And I said, he said, "Well, yeah, as long as I can have the eggs." He said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Portsmouth." Then he said, "I went away once." He said, "I went to London for the day." He said, "I didn't like it. I'm never going to go away again."
I've got through 5 vicars. Mr. Isaacson, I knew I shouldn't say this because I won't remember them all now. Jackson. John Wyburn, Richard. Oh, of course, what's his name? From Long Crendon. He was an eccentric. He was great. And I can't remember his name. Come on, Fenella.
Stanley Young.
Yeah, Stanley Young. And I used to go down to Evensong, and suddenly, sometimes it was only me and Stanley at Evensong. And I had a lovely collie dog. Bring her in, so I'd bring the dog in with us, and he loved the dog. But he was a character, Stanley. Oh, of course, Julian Harford. He was the next. He was like a monk in a way. He was, I'm very fond, and he still rings me up, and he must be nearly 100 now.
Stanley Young. Who's going to do Stanley Young?
Well, Stanley was, he was a history teacher at Bradfield, I think. I think it's fair to say, was a little bit different, elevated thought. He would talk about Russian history and paintings in the church, and people didn't know whether he was speaking out of knowledge or whether it was something he'd thought about. The recollections that many people have of this cherubic-faced, round-faced, he ended up as a canon, going round carol singing with a large cassock with a bulldog clip here, with a slightly bent top hat on, and a crooked star piece of wood with an old candle lamp going round just like Dickensian times, but he was loved by everybody, and he didn't matter to Stanley whether you went to church, because he was a real parochial vicar and would come to your house if you had a bereavement and would be very, very pleased to cooperate. It's difficult not to smile because he would come to your doorstep with a Stanley Bridges orange hat with Stanley on the front, and he had sort of blacked in eyebrows, and this sort of apparition appeared, lovely Stanley. I think I'd better stop there, but he was
He
quite
used
a
to
character.
dry his underwear. He'd tell you to go upstairs to use the loo or whatever, but he used to dry all his underwear, and it used to be on all the radiators upstairs. But amongst that was a statue of Chairman Mao.
I miss the fact that the congregations in church are so much lower than they used to be. Ordinary Sundays, there used to be a lovely lot of congregation, good singing, and if you went to a festival, say Christmas, Mothering Sunday, Easter, Harvest, those sorts of things, you'd be 20 minutes early or you'd stand. So I think it's a great pity that there are fewer people in church now, but we're always delighted to see people when they come for special occasions.
There was a post office there, which you know, and they had somebody stole some stuff, sweets or something, out of the van, the lorry, and I remember I was with at Granny's, and they came to speak to me, and my grandmother said, "Why, what's she done?" Nothing. They always assume you've done the worst. They wanted to know if I'd seen anybody eating extra sweets on the bus. Well, I hadn't, but I wasn't going to say anything anyway if I had. So.
And also riding two on a bike that we all used to do, because not all of us had bicycles, so we'd share bicycles, but we was always getting told off. We could hear him coming on his little motorbike. We knew it was going to be him. But yeah, there was two, weren't there? Was Hadnam.
Yeah, and long
Granger,
Mr. Granger as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
We used to go along Black Path that we know it, but it's called Hicks's Path, I believe now. And we used to throw just stones on top of the tin roof when poor Mr. Clark used to live there.
In the cottage.
And then we'd tie cotton onto letterboxes and sit behind the edge, and so we used to get told off. But that was all we done really. We didn't do very much.
Our next door neighbour Cecil and Else were running the shop. Apparently, we didn't see this, but one day a couple of vandals turned up and tried to turn him over, steal the money out of the post office. So he'd been in the army before. He'd been at Dunkirk actually, and he shooed them away. It was quite a dramatic moment.
Cecil used to run the shop and the post office, and then one day a car drew up and two guys came out with pickaxe handles, went in the shop, and dear old Cecil, being Cecil, said, "Look, you can't come into my shop, be off."
He said bugger off.
And I was going to, I said, "Bugger off," which they did. Anyway.
Oh, he was lovely. He was a lovely man.
And then you had your car nicked, didn't you?
Oh, when I was babysitting one night, my Ford Anglia, they nicked it. But they only got as far, which was the
It was
chicken
full of
farm.
Christmas presents.
No, that was another time.
Oh, was it all? Oh,
Yeah.
right.
It was. It only got as far as where John Lewis lives now. That used to all be the chicken farm because it ran out of petrol.
Yeah.
And another time, yes, we hadn't been in the village. We came back from Cheshire, from my family, with loads of Christmas presents, and they were stolen from the boot of my Ford Anglia. But obviously, no one was impressed because I found them all littered down Church Lane afterwards.
I was on the parish council, the PCC and John Hart's charity. One of the biggest things on the parish council, we had 3 lovely elm trees out at the pub, and they were going to be cut down. And there was a thing, if it's cut down, there's going to be no more babies in the village. And we had a great uproar when they were cut down. But that was some time ago, because you can see now they've got 3, what are they? Are they elm? No, they aren't elm, because when I came was the time when all the elms were dying in the country. And now we've got the ashes, which is very sad.
No.
Yeah.
I once brought a major of the United States Air Force into the bell here, and there was a dartboard up there on the wall, and he said, "Gee, it's just like I imagined it was in Shakespeare's time."
Well, I didn't really come in a lot. I think we went round the back to get Vimto and take bottles back. Didn't used to get that. Used to go and get the Vimto and bottles, but really, women didn't really come in. Not when I was younger. Obviously, a bit later they did, but it didn't really come in a lot. We used to have family come from like families that my grandmother's sisters who'd moved up to Hendon and places. They used to come on holiday, and they always used to come into the bell. That's the husbands and that used to come in the bell, and they used to love that. But I didn't really come in. I was too young to come in, really.
I did, because my mum worked here, so in the bell, so I was there quite a bit. Really.
And the pub here, that was run by a miserable old git called Bert, who was an ex-policeman.
Yeah, that's when he was here when we first arrived.
Yeah.
I don't know how long he'd been here, but he hadn't been here since 1939.
The ceilings were yellow with smoke.
Oh, it was dreadful.
That's one thing
dreadful.
that has improved in the village.
And then we had Jan and Annie, didn't we? And food was then served. We had beautiful doorstop sandwiches. But they were great characters.
Yeah, we left
now
in 79.
The lovely Sharon, and of course we miss Ollie, yeah. Without the pub, I don't quite know what the village would do, because the shop is now closed.
The old village hall had been built very kindly by Lady Floyd directly after the war, but it was flimsy, I think is the word for it. The children ran around inside, as children do, bumping into the walls, and if you were outside you could see the wall bend out. They were made of a sort of compressed paper, I think, between brick pillars. Very, very chilly. Children in a playgroup in the winter, definitely wearing their coats and their mufflers and that sort of thing. It was rebuilt, I can't remember exactly when, but we put breeze blocks where the paper had been, and immediately the difference in the warmth inside was incredible. The loos, again, there were absolutely terrible, but I think in the 70s, outside loos were pretty ghastly, and we just sort of put up with it because it's what it was. But the new village hall, apart from its terrible echo, is absolutely brilliant with its 2 rooms and its much better facilities. And I'm not surprised that it's so well booked up, because it is a really good facility.
Completion date, October the 3rd, 1969. 69. So then it was a question of finding livestock, and so that was Farmers Weekly again. So we actually had 36 belted Galloway cows as our starting lot, which was rather striking. They weren't at all what I was looking for, but they were all together, they were one lot, they were related, they were healthy and no problems by the look of it. And the farmer had sold his land for gravel and needed to get rid of the herd, so there it was, bang, we had a herd.
It's lovely living in Chearsley, and I'm very happy there.
Thank you very much. Job done. Back to your +3, 6 o'clock club duties.
He's